Session of the overall school garden leadership training series for the 2021 to 2022 school year. And so this session we have titled Perennial and Pollinator Party. And we're really excited to talk about fruit trees and edible perennials and pollinator gardens today. And yeah, this is just a really exciting topic and we have a lot to cover. So we hope that you enjoy it. My name is Kelly Wilson and I work as a food systems specialist with the University of Florida IFAS Extension Family Nutrition Program. So again, thank you so much for being here. In order to have the optimal Zoom experience today in our virtual setting, we do recommend that you exit out of the Zoom full screen mode just by clicking the escape button or clicking exit full screen. And you can use the side-by-side speaker view. So you will generally find that in your top, in the top toolbar where it says view, and then click down to click side-by-side speaker, because then you'll be able to toggle back and forth. There's a middle bar that you can make either the speakers kind of face really big or the PowerPoint really big, depending on what you'd like to see. And you can see who is in the room with us today by clicking on the participants button, and participate in the chat by sharing your, your name or any questions that you have in the chat box by clicking on that icon. And for kind of the duration of our session content, we do ask that you keep your microphones muted and stop your video cameras just to reduce any distractions. But we are excited because we have a few breakout room opportunities. And when we have those smaller group interactions, we would love for you to turn on your video cameras, unmute, talk to one another, have that face-to-face interaction, because a big goal of this series is to form a network among school garden leaders. And so with that in mind, we would love for you to introduce yourselves in the chat by sharing your name, your organization or school, the county where you're located, and then your favorite Florida fruit or edible perennial. And we also invite you to share and acknowledge the indigenous communities that have historically and presently inhabited the land where you're living and growing food on, just to give gratitude and to remember the history of Native peoples where we live and work and eat and play every day. So thank you so much for introducing yourselves. And just to introduce all of us, who are kind of the co-sponsors of this webinar series. First, we have Florida Agriculture in the Classroom. So Florida Agriculture in the Classroom is a statewide nonprofit organization that's funded by the specialty license plate called the Ag Tag. And Florida Ag in the Classroom connects kids to healthy food in Florida agriculture through educational resources, teacher professional development, grants, and other farm to school programming. So you can see a description of all of those services here on the slide. And Ag in the Classroom has a vision to ensure that every student in pre-K to 12th grade is aware of and appreciates agriculture and natural resources in Florida. So I definitely encourage you to reach out to Becky, Jennifer, and Tiffany, who are the wonderful staff with Florida Agriculture in the Classroom. They are really amazing to work with, and they are eager to support you in your gardening journey. And the organization that I represent, the UF IFAS Extension Family Nutrition Program, is one of Florida's SNAP education implementing agencies, and we have provided free nutrition education to SNAP eligible people in Florida since 1996. We're currently located and serving 40 counties throughout the state, and our role is really to provide that nutrition education and free resources that will make the healthy choice the easy choice, ultimately to help limited resource families in Florida access more nutritious food choices on a budget and adopt healthier eating and physical activity habits. And we know that school gardens and gardening in general is a great way to be more active and eat more vegetables. So that is why we're here today, and you can find us online and on Instagram and Facebook. So please do connect with us, locally in your counties and on the web. So while we're here, we are hosting this webinar series and making the space available for all of you because we want to build your gardening confidence and foster collaboration among leaders and ultimately strengthen garden programs for long-term success. And we know that a garden program at a school is way more than just that physical space. It's all of the interactions that occur with the students and with the teachers, with the school community, using the garden as an outdoor classroom to teach the different standards that are important for students to learn. And so we have categorized and identified these 3 spheres of sustainability, which are leadership skills, gardening knowledge, and curricula connections to really cover all of the areas that will ensure that you have a long-term sustainable garden program that is super impactful for everyone involved. And so we try to incorporate each of these 3 spheres of sustainability into every single webinar sessions that we do. So today, what that looks like is sharing about the different horticultural aspects of perennial gardening related to food forests and fruit trees and bushes and pollinator gardens and native plants. We're also going to share a number of teaching resources that you can use to interact with your students in this way and teach about these different topics. And we will finally, in the realm of kind of leadership skills, talk about the social benefits of planting perennials and different grant opportunities that can help you fund your gardens. So all of that will be covered in this 1-hour session. And from 4:30 to 5:30 after that point, we're going to have a Q&A and networking time. So if you have any questions as we're going over the content, we do encourage you to put your questions in the chat, and we'll be compiling those to review and address during that time. So why perennials? Why are we talking about this today? I will say that this is primarily because you all asked to cover this topic. So back in the summer of last year, we sent out a survey and we asked what topics you'd like to learn about for this year. And you said fruit trees, perennials, food forests, and we listened. We are talking about perennials today because you requested it. We really do listen to the feedback that you give. And we are excited to share about this topic. And besides that, the perennials are really wonderful to plant in your school garden. There are numerous benefits of planting them, and we're going to hear a lot of that from our guest speakers. But just to kind of frame some of the management benefits of growing perennials in your school garden, they do grow year to year. So in contrast to annual plants, which complete their life cycle in 1 year or in 1 season. So we can think of, kale or tomatoes or other things like that that will produce their fruit, produce their seeds in that 1 year. Perennial plants will keep growing and produce their seeds and their fruit and foliage and anything that you would be using year after year, which is really helpful because after that initial investment, they're relatively low maintenance long-term. So, upfront, you're going to perhaps spend a bit more money than you would be doing if you bought a seed packet. And you'll definitely want to have a plan for the design of your school garden. Where are you going to be placing and planting these perennial plants? What is your irrigation plan? How can you ensure that it is really low maintenance because you have an automatic watering system? You don't have to go out with a hose or a watering can on a regular basis to water your fruit trees. But in any case, after that initial investment, they are lower maintenance. So you don't have to plant, entirely new raised bed garden every year if you're relying on kind of a food forest or perennial design. So it will require less time, less volunteer labor, less time spent recruiting volunteers, and less money because you won't need to buy, these seedlings or soil to plant that raised bed like you would with annual plants. And perennials are super great because can be a way to use the edges of your garden space or, kind of think creatively about the space that you have to have this lower maintenance food production that's a bit more passive, or maybe use that space to attract pollinators and just have overall more student engagement. So we're going to hear a lot more about that in detail from our next guest speaker, who is Debbie LaBelle, and she is the Edible Garden Initiative Program Manager with the Education Fund. And she's going to share a lot about what the Education Fund is doing in Miami-Dade and the benefits of perennials and food forests in your school garden. And I'm so excited that she's here with us today to share about what she does. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Debbie.
Okay, hi, can everybody hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So yes, we have Food Forest in Miami-Dade. Food Forest for Schools actually supports 51 edible gardens in Miami-Dade, and 27 of them are food forests. About 85% of our food forests, we have perennials because yes, they require so much less maintenance and they just grow year after year. And then about the last 15% is where we will have our annuals, our carrots and our tomatoes and the other fun stuff. Are you guys going to be flipping through the slides?
Yes, I will advance the slide. Tell me whenever you're ready.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, there you go.
Okay, so our vision with the Education Fund and Food Forest for Schools is that everybody has an outdoor space for students to increase their academic achievement, improve their health by growing what they eat, and to learn about the environment. We consider all of our food forests to be an outdoor classroom where students could learn about all of this in one spot. And I mean, we have the perfect weather to be outside in the middle of winter learning all of this. Next. Okay, so a perennial plant, I know Tiffany just went over some of this, it lives more than 2 years. It's also with little or no woody growth. So we have, like I said, about 85% of our food forests and gardens are perennials, and nearly all forest plants are perennials. So it works perfectly in our food forests. Next, and then the annuals will germinate, flower, seed set, and die all in one season. So that will be like their carrots and your tomatoes and the other peppers and things like that. Yeah, so Florida is unique in that it has a lot of planting zones. We cover so many different areas. Down here in Miami, we're 10B. And, up in the Panhandle, obviously, that's a very different growing season. So Miami is a subtropical. Actually, when we were doing our food forests and finding perennial plants, we were having a difficult time initially because there's no information out there on subtropical perennials. Everything that we saw in food forests and perennials were made for up north. And, in the February, as gorgeous as it is right now, our plants are growing like crazy in this beautiful weather. So all of our perennials generally do well in all of Florida planting zones. So everything that I'll be talking about today through all of these different planting zones. Next. So, and what we do with our food forests is the perennial plants can be native to latitude, not necessarily native to the subtropical, Miami subtropics, but we base it on latitude. So we have plants from all around the world, and we include a lot of these plants in our social studies. So when you're talking about like Southeast Asia is perfectly in line with Miami. So when we're talking about, Okinawa spinach or some of these other perennials, it actually ties in these other countries that are not so close. So when you're looking for perennials, don't look for your zone, but look for the opposite end of the globe about on the same latitude. And you might find some really interesting plants that will grow perfectly in your zone. Next. So like I said a few slides ago, we had a really hard time when we started our food forest on finding plants that would grow here in Miami. And we had to actually create a lot of relationships with local nurseries, and actually a couple of nurseries that that some of the plants that we were trying to grow and introduce into our food forest would never take off down here. And now they can't keep those same plants in stock because we've created a need for them. And these plants grow with little to no care. So, we want no effort gardening. Next. And within the book, we broke it up into, ground cover, shrubs, canopy, mid canopy, larger canopy. And it's a little book. It's our first book, the first version. So it's about 50 pages, but these are all our tried and true plants that will grow here in Florida, like I said, with little to no effort. And I'm going to have at the end of this, I'm going to have a link that if you want me to send you a copy, I can send it to you. And I can also send you a PDF version if it's easier for you. Next. So some of the plants that we were growing, and like I said, you can look for your latitude and things that grow in other areas, but are native. So like the African blue basil, we can't grow in South Florida. We can't grow like Italian basil. It will grow, but it takes a lot of care and a lot of effort. The African blue basil, it grows by cutting. So you can just pinch a little piece off, stick it in the ground, and it will grow a new plant. It loves the heat. It loves the humidity of South Florida. Costa Rican mint is a bush mint, and it grows really, really well down here. And it's delicious in teas. The Barbados cherry or the acerola cherry, it's a Caribbean cherry. So for us, a lot of our families, when they come in and they see these trees in the food forest, they get really excited because these are fruits and vegetables that you can't find at the grocery store. But for a lot of our demographics and the students in our schools, this is what their parents know, and this is what the grandparents know. I've had parents start crying when they see some of these plants because it's native to them. It's what they grew up eating as a kid. So it's really special when you see some of these plants and how the parents and the families interact with them. And then the cranberry hibiscus, that's always the kids' favorite. That's a gorgeous bush. That one will die off in the wintertime for us, but it will reseed itself and just start growing again. Once the rains start coming back in the spring, it grows right back. So definitely perennial. The kids love it. It's very sour. Some other ones that we like to grow, loquats. So that's actually a Japanese plum. Grows excellent down here. Allspice, that's from the Caribbean. It's another tree. During Hurricane Irma, we actually found all of the trees from the myrtle families did really, really well. So that was allspice, bay rum, bay laurels. They all held up to the hurricane winds really well. So we've increased our planting of these trees. Moringa is another great edible tree, and that one's from Africa. And Okinawa spinach is again from Japan. So these are just like incredible resources, and the kids love them. They grow effortlessly. We all know teachers have a busy enough schedule trying to teach, and we try not to have too many plants that you have to force to grow really hard. Some of the plants take a lot of TLC and everything. These are almost grow with no attention. Another resource that we created over the last year was these cards, these information cards. We have with our most common herbs and greens of the food forest. We've used these to increase our parent outreach. Like I said, some of the families know what some of these plants are, and they get really excited when they see it at the schools. The last 2 years, they haven't been in the schools as much. So reaching some of these families has been a little difficult. So we created these cards, and when we harvest at the schools and send the harvest bags home with the kids, we're sending them with these cards to increase the knowledge among the families. And we just have very simple, basic, what they smell like, what they taste like, how they can include them into a meal, and some really basic nutritional contents of each of these plants. And then at the end of the presentation, I'll have links for that. We also use these cards for scavenger hunts in the food forest. So we'll give the cards to the kids, and we'll send them out and looking for these plants in the food forest. And it's a great way for the kids to find and explore and use their senses to find what's on the card, and it familiarizes them a lot more with what's growing in their food forest. Next.
Thanks, Debbie. You have about 2 to 3 minutes left.
Okay, I'm running. So like I said at the beginning, we have 51 schools that we're in Miami-Dade County. Our resources are available to everybody. But if you're in Miami and you're interested in participating or getting on our waiting list, you're more than welcome to sign up and reach out and contact me. Next. So just really quickly, some people get confused on what's a food forest versus a garden. Like I said, we have about 85% perennials, and then it's multi-layered. So actually we take over the whole landscaping of an area at the school, and it increases biodiversity and creates habitat. Next. Running. So when we do the landscaping, we design it and we include an actual outdoor classroom into this space, and we create pathways. It helps with irrigation issues at the schools, and beautifies the area. So we walk the line of having a food forest and working with the school administrators, and we try to make them pretty as well. So with design element wise, we always have a defined interest. We have banana circles, which actually help with composting. All of everything that's cut down within the food forest is added to the banana circles, which then feeds the bananas and increases the output of bananas with the walking paths and the outdoor gardening space. Next. Russian. And then this is just, I wanted to show you real quick a before and after when I say like it beautifies it and it includes nutrition and everything else that we have. So that's after. So it goes from a blank field to this beautiful. And then the kids are out there all the time. This is all the same school. These kids are outside learning about soil science in the banana circle, and they're doing lessons, science lessons within the food forest. We actually have science modules that align with our pacing guide with Miami, but it kind of is cross. I'm sure most of the school districts are about the same on the pacing guides, with worksheets, and it has the science, all the big ideas onto it, the standards, and all of this is available on our website. So I'm going to have this on, I'm going to add this as a link as well. And this is an example of our modules. And we also do workshops every Wednesday if anybody's interested in attending them. We go over the 5 E's. When we go to the schools and we help our teachers, we usually do the first 3 E's, and then the teachers can follow up, but there's 2 activities, 3 worksheets for each module. We're also working with FIU and research to increase insect diversity. Insects are not always bad, so we try to teach the kids the good insects. A lot of the insects more of the insects that you find in the food forest are actually better and helping things. So we gotta take care of our bugs. Next, there's the last one. Oh, and this is just a little student impacts. We year after year we do show that the students increase their STEM proficiency, and we also the teachers report by the kids being outdoors and being hands-on with all of these lessons that they're way more interested in science. And that's it. Thank you. I hope I stayed within the time limit.
You were great. That was really amazing, Debbie. Thank you so much. Yeah, your work with the Education Fund is super incredible. And I love that you've made all of those resources available to our participants today. So definitely encourage everyone to check that out. But now to transition into fruit specifically, which could be a component of your food forest. If you've been following along with our webinar series, we generally have spotlighted gardens around the state. And so today we thought it would be fun to spotlight a few of our favorite fruit plants that you can grow in Florida. So the first one that we are featuring is the Satsuma mandarin. And we love it because they're delicious. They're really easy to peel. They have less seeds than other citrus, and so that makes them quite kid friendly. And you can grow them mostly in North Florida is where they're found, but you can also grow them a bit more in Central. And really, especially when growing any type of fruit tree, but in this case with the Satsuma, you want to give it space to expand. So when you plant a little fruit tree seedling, you might think, oh, I can squeeze a whole bunch of them in here, but you do want to give the Satsuma at least 15 to 20 feet of space to expand and to grow. And again, consider how big will this full-size tree be when it's fully mature. and just give that adequate space. And beware of diseases with citrus. They are definitely susceptible to some of the diseases that we have in Florida. So make sure that you have a schedule for pruning and fertilizing, and make sure that your plant is well watered. And they're really easy to harvest with clippers. So our second spotlight is the blueberry bush. And we love blueberries because they're super healthy and, again, a very delicious fruit, and they don't require any prep work to eat. You can just eat them by the handful off the bush, and you'll find them growing and probably have the best success with blueberry plants in the north and central parts of the state. And the thing you want to keep in mind with blueberries is that you need multiple plants in order to achieve pollination. So if you just have one single blueberry bush, the bush is not going to cross-pollinate and it will not set fruit. So you'll need to have several different blueberry bushes, about 6 together in that same place, so you can achieve cross-pollination and the bushes will bear. And blueberries really like acidic soil that is well drained. So any way that you can increase the acidity of your soil, if you have naturally acidic soils, if you do a pH test, then that could be a good spot to plant blueberries. And finally, bananas are our spotlight. So, bananas are not technically a tree. They are an herbaceous plant because they don't have a woody stem, but we love bananas because they're, a really important food crop, and growing a banana in the school garden can be a great way to learn about other cultivars that you wouldn't be able to buy in a grocery store. And they are most suited to growing in South Florida and Central Florida, but you could have some seasonal success, or, select specific varieties that might be better suited for the North. But really they are most happy in the tropical places of South Florida. So like Debbie mentioned, they do like a lot of water. They are heavy feeders, as we say. And so, combining them with your compost, having a banana circle with compost in the middle, or just heavily fertilizing them is the way you'd like to manage it. And, bananas, to harvest the banana, you actually cut down the entire stalk, and then you cut the bunch off after that. And you'll want to make sure to wash all of your implements and do your best to wear the dirty clothes that you have, because the banana sap will stain everything that you have. So bananas are a lot of fun, and they take about 9 to 20 months to bear, but you'll certainly get a lot of food out of it, considering how big the stalks are. So those are the 3 fruits that we wanted to highlight today. But to dive a little bit deeper into specific types of fruit, we would like to open up some breakout rooms. So our intention is for you to select the specific type of fruit that you'd like to learn more about, or maybe that you already have planted in your garden. And so you can select either tropical fruit, citrus, berries, or stone fruit, and you can actually choose which breakout room to go into. And we have invited some special guests who are specifically knowledgeable about these different types of fruit trees to join and to share their expertise. So, I encourage you to join those rooms and just converse and share about your experiences and ask any questions that you have. So I think we are ready to open up those rooms, and you can choose which one you'd like to go into. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'm here. I'll be here. I can help you get into a room. I see more and more people coming in. I think we'll wait about 20 more seconds, or maybe 30 more seconds. But I hope it was good. Maybe learned some things, shared about what you do with fruit. Okay, and now I see many more people coming in. We're at 52 participants in here, so we will
or urban hort program specialist, sorry, but I am the one that is the big, I guess you could call me almost a geek when it comes to butterflies and all sorts of pollinators. I just love all those insects out in the landscape. So if you'd go to the next slide. I want to thank you guys for for remembering that this is an important part of growing anything out there in the landscape. It's important to understand why we need pollinators, and they should be in every school garden, every park, every part of our landscapes. And why? Because 90% of our flowering plants are going to need a pollinator. 1/3 of our human food crops, I would say that's the 1/3, that's the really healthy part, the fruits and vegetables we were just talking about. And even the leafy greens, they need to produce seed that we can grow them from. So we depend a lot more on pollinators than we think, and they are in distress. They're one of the things that's being hit hard by different things like climate change, and just lack of us remembering to include these plants in our landscapes can be one of the issues as well. And of course, using, we'll see in the next slide, some things that we can do. But we need this. This is all part of the life cycle of everything on the planet. It all works together. The more we learn, the more we discover that everything has its own niche in life, and everything contributes to the overall well-being. So I will just one more point here. Even if it's not something that requires a pollinator, it might be wind pollinated. You will generally get a better fruit set. You'll get larger fruit. It will just increase. It will help out in that aspect as well. So, and plus, hey, why do we need pollinators? Maybe because they're just beautiful, and they're the reason that flowers are so gorgeous and they smell so good. So next slide. What can we do for pollinators? We know what pollinators do for us. So one thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we have nectar sources. And I'm kind of speaking here for South Florida because it never really gets freezing weather down here. So we have all of our pollinators most of the time all year. And in our gardens here, we have things that flower at different times. It's very hard to find one plant or anything that blooms all year long, but there are a few. But you want to make sure that you stagger and you have things that are going to be blooming throughout that period. You can't always depend on what you're growing to be the source of nectar for your pollinator. And also, when it comes to butterflies and moths, we want to have those larval host plants that they can lay their eggs on. That's a fascinating thing for everybody to get involved. They lay their eggs on these plants. Sometimes they are specific plants. Sometimes, like a moth might use many plants as a larval host, but that egg will hatch. That little caterpillar crawls out really tiny and starts to consume the leaves of this plant. So you can follow the progress that this makes. And interesting to consider that butterflies and moths usually have a lifespan of about 3 to 4 weeks. So it's easy to follow their progress and check on them as they're growing in the garden. Probably one of the most important things is chemical-free environment. It is through not having the plants that provide the nectar and the larval host plants, that would be loss of habitat. But also the chemicals that we can use in our landscapes when we're spraying something to knock down any insects, we have collateral damage. So we want to be very careful if we're going to use anything, and you certainly want to be very careful if you're going to be consuming the food. So when you're taking care of what you're going to consume yourselves, you are also being very careful to make sure. There's much more information on that we can provide, but just keep that in mind. Chemicals are a last resort. It's usually a culture or how you're doing something, and most of the insect problems they're very small. There's only a few of them, and yes, they might come and eat all of your arugula. The white butterflies will lay their eggs on it, and yeah, it might be eaten up, but it's the end of the season for arugula anyway, and we need those like white butterflies. So this fits right in with food for us because we need different heights of things. And we need to provide, that'll help create habitat, and we need to create a balanced Florida-friendly landscape. And there is one golden rule for anything you do outside in the landscape is nothing invasive. Even if it's the best pollinator plant or the best tasting thing, it will eventually cause too many problems down the road and skew things out of balance. Next. So this is Florida-friendly landscaping, and we can provide links. This program is over 30 years old now, and it's kind of 9 principles that help all of us get back to, you know, what it means to touch the earth. A lot of us have walked away from that as we became urbanites, and we've forgotten some of those basic things that our grandfathers and our grandparents knew. So this will help guide us. There's handbooks on this. We share this. It's available online, and we'll make this resource available to you also. But Florida-friendly landscaping, right plant, right place. Next slide. I consider next the cornerstone of the entire program. Oops. And I think that plant knowledge is one of the ways that we will get sort of everything in balance in our environment and maybe curb some of the issues that we're seeing with climate change. If I may speak freely, planting more trees and planting the things where they will grow and thrive. We know that those things can help, and we know we're losing diversity and species, and getting that plant knowledge. Right plant, right place. Looks like there's a lot here, but I think you're going to see happens is you're going to get that bug, that passion for gardening. And then you're going to see your first caterpillar, and your kids are going to see it. Yesterday, I had a little girl with a monarch caterpillar in her hand, and I was putting violets in her hair. She was just like gone and totally into learning more about that connection. And the more we understand and interact with our environment, the more we will better be able to understand what exactly is going on and figure out more ways that we can help our planet. So next slide.
Thanks, Barbara. You have about 2 to 3 minutes left.
See, I talk too much. So where are those sources to learn about native plants? Native plants are usually the best sources. They have the fine nectar source, and they are also oftentimes going to be the larval host plant. It's a relationship that has evolved over time. First of all, your local extension office, and we're happy to say we're in all 67 counties. Your Florida Native Plant Society is also well spread throughout the whole state, and not as many, but there are more and more. Your North American Butterfly Association, if you're really interested in what to plant for a butterfly, they are different from region to region, just like our plants are different. So next slide. I'm not going to be able to share everything with you. This is great if you live south or just to the north of Lake Okeechobee. This is a resource for 10 counties, and it is the database that to end all databases on plants. It tells you how to grow it, what it attracts, what the wildlife interactions are, and it even gives you suggestions on where you can find it. Next slide. So some of my favorites, if you have space, this grows throughout the entire state, throughout the entire United States. An oak tree may not be in your food forest, but it should be in your food forest for wildlife, because it just increases the biodiversity of wildlife out there exponentially. And it's a fascinating source just for bird watching. Butterflies use it for larval host plant. Hummingbirds come and they actually not only take nectar from the flowers, which are going to break out here in Miami, but they'll collect the pollen. And I've seen owls and all kinds of wildlife in these trees. Next slide. And there's shade. We need shade, right? So we went from really big to really small. This is frog fruit, fog fruit, has many names. You can see it's tiny. Next slide. This is one of those things I like to point out. It's this little tiny nectar-packed flower that is a larval host for 3 butterflies and has every pollinator in the garden coming to it and drinking that nectar. All of the bees, whether they're honeybees, and we have this, you can find it at any big box store, drought tolerant, blooms throughout the winter. Those are Gulf fritillaries. Next. And this one will grow all throughout the state of Florida. Larval host plant for 3 different butterflies. Some people like to call these the big showy eye candy butterflies, these and monarchs, but you can easily entice these to your garden. And even if you plant a more showy passion flower, include that native. This is what our farms used to look like. And now there's a movement to go back to having these native pollinator plants. Of course, this is part of the saga of monarchs. Where is the milkweed that used to grow along the roadsides of these farmlands and in open areas? So this is recognizing that relationship. It's a great poster. I ordered it for myself and I have it at home. And it's also one of our great, just look at everybody that's involved. And if we get to come to your school here in Miami-Dade County, we bring plenty to share. And I encourage you all to contact your local extension office and find out who will come to your school. We love working with kids. And that's it. If you get those pollinators, you might have some habitat for the birds.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I love how your passion shines through the screen.
Always.
And just kind of to wrap us up here, I'd like to invite Tiffany Torres with the Florida Agriculture in the Classroom, who's our state school garden specialist, to share about curricula connections and grants.
Sure, happy to cover a few things real quick. And to get started, I'm going to go ahead and pop in the chat once more our link library. So you can find all of the things I'm about to discuss here at this link library. So the first thing we wanted to include was the UF-IFAS Extension Pollinator Power Safari Kit. It's a really fun kit that includes all these things that you can see here, some tools to get into the garden and start exploring. It does cost $50 for the classroom set, but you can reuse it over and over again. And this is for grades 5 through 8, but it's a very investigative and active activity, and it is research-based as well. So we recommend that one. And then over on the right, we have a free digital download resource. All of these are linked in that link library as well. And this is a little earlier ages, grades 3 through 4. And it's from the Florida Wildflower Foundation. As Barbara mentioned, there's a lot of amazing entities across the state that can help with wildflowers and native pollinators and native plants. So we recommend getting started with these two if you're teaching grades 3 through 8. Go ahead. And then kind of on our consumption, nutrition end of things, we did want to highlight the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services Harvest of the Month program. So this program's been around for a while, but these are 3 of the fruits that we talked about today: tropical fruit, avocado, got our blueberries and our satsuma. So those are for the respective months there. And this is just a really cool resource you can sign up for at the Florida Department of Agriculture's website. And they will send you either the digital download for all of these activities, which include PowerPoints and activities, as well as you can get stickers and other interactive things mailed to you directly. So we recommend signing up for all of the Harvest of the Month and focusing on those if you would like. And then grants, there are a couple grants we wanted to spotlight this month that are maybe helpful to you as you move forward with your food forest, fruit trees, or pollinator gardens. The first is with Florida Agriculture in the Classroom. We have up to $2,500 available for any school garden support organization or 501c3, and this closes at March 15th. So please get your applications in if you'd like to sign up for that. And Seedlings for Schools grant, this is with the Florida Wildflower Foundation, and it's pretty cool because they actually will give you the plants for your school, and then they also will send a professional to your school to help you install your garden. So that application is due May 31st. And finally, this is not a specific grant that's available, but I have networked with a couple different Audubon chapters across the state, and they always have different opportunities throughout the year to support bird habitat in school garden settings. So I recommend clicking this link to find your local chapter with Audubon and just trying to get in touch with them and see if they have any regional grants available throughout the year that would help enhance your pollinator gardens. And I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Those are super helpful resources. So to wrap up our session and cover some of our key takeaways from the day, on the gardening knowledge side of things, there are so many edible options that you can fill in your garden with, whether you're making a full-on multi-layered food forest or just making a perennial hedge or some ground cover. The options really are extensive. And when selecting fruit trees, it's important to think about the regionally appropriate varieties, the management considerations, and the fruits that will bear during the school year, because of course you want your students to enjoy the harvest. And of course, pollinator plants are a really important part of the garden and part of the natural environment, and they can ensure that both the garden and the natural environment stay healthy and happy when you are giving the pollinators the things that they need with their habitat and their nectar, like Barbara shared. We throughout the presentation shared lots of different resources for teaching about perennials, those that Tiffany shared, and then also the numerous resources and workshop opportunities from the Education Fund. So we do hope that you'll make use of them. And to reiterate, planting perennials is a low maintenance and high impact strategy to sustain your garden for the long term. So this is a really great thing to do for your school garden that can last even beyond your time at the school because of kind of that longevity with the perennials. And kind of lastly, applying for grants is a great way to fund your perennial gardening efforts and connect with your community. And there are specific options that are available that we just shared about, and then other ones that are linked in the link library that you can check out as well. So this, concludes the hour-long session that we have, and we will transition into our half an hour of Q&A time from 4:30 to 5:30, 4:30 to 5 p.m. And if you do have to go right now, we do ask that you would complete the surveys before you leave. So those are being linked in the chat. And the survey options that we have that we would ask you to complete are our feedback survey. So that's just a handful of questions, about 3 minutes to complete, to share what we did well, what you'd like to see improved. And like I said at the beginning, we listen to what you say, we value your feedback. And so you can link that or use the link in the chat or use this QR code here on the screen to access it. And we also have a professional development request survey for CEUs if you'd like to get some professional development credit for participating today. And we have our Facebook group that is open and a place for collaboration and networking, kind of learning together. That's the space we're hoping that to be for you. And of course, our Google Drive folder with all of the resources from the session and the link library that has been mentioned a few times to go back and refer to the resources that we've shared as you're planning your school garden. So we hope that you will join us next month on March 31st from 3:30 to 5 p.m. Same place on Zoom. And next time we will be covering the topic of composting colloquium. So all about soil fertility and making what was dead come into something that's really good and life-giving for the garden. So it's going to be a really exciting topic, and we hope you can make it. And that will lead us into our breakout rooms. And we're going to have kind of another time of conversation in smaller groups for this session. But before we break up, just wanted to give a little space to the big group and see if there was any kind of general questions that we could address together right now.
So Kelly, I just saw this question in the chat about, is it possible to have all this great information in the presentation shared or the link for the video to review again in the future?
Absolutely. So as soon as we have the Zoom recording ready, we will send that out to an email to all the participants. And we actually have a playlist of all of our webinar sessions on YouTube. So you can review any of them at any time to have access for this information. And our Google Drive folder and the link libraries that are associated with each session are available online for free at any time. And we too, if you have specific questions or if you want to know something, feel free to reach out to us directly via email or phone call, any way that you'd like. Thank you for the question. I'm glad this is valuable enough that you'd like to review in the future.
So another question came in, Kelly. This is from Coral. And this is a good question for how to avoid insects infecting fruit trees and the rest of our gardens. And like the worst case, how to detect and make sure we don't give students anything that's unhealthy to eat.
Perhaps like if you got some bugs inside of your fruit that you wouldn't want to feed your students.
That's how I read the question. Yeah, but Coral, please feel free to jump in yourself.
Right. So it's just, it's kind of the second question, sorry, is just a continuation of the first. So one, how to detect, if insects are a problem. Sometimes I know it might not be as easy if they're still in like the larva stages. And then part two would be, what would be the easiest way of kind of ensuring that everything is healthy for students to eat. If there's larvae, I don't know if it'll be as obvious to see it, or, if we're checking every single piece of everything we're giving them and if it has bugs. So just, what's the best practice for that, I guess.
Question. I saw, it looks like Barbara, you want to say something to that?
Yeah, there's only a few fruits that I can think of that will get actual insects inside of them. Of course, you inspect to see if there's any holes. Sometimes we have tomatoes where something has gotten into them. But the other one I can think of is, I can't remember the name right now, guava. And that will get insects inside. And the only way to prevent that from getting insects is to bag them. And I happen to have one of these right here. I've collected my milkweed seeds in this little organza bag, and you can get them. So you can cut it up and see if anything's gotten into, but I can't think of any other major issues where something is going to get inside that you won't see a hole, and most of the time insects in the landscape in the garden are not going to do significant damage to warrant, using something to get rid of them. But always, you can contact your local extension office and you can send them a photo and they'll walk you through it. They'll diagnose it and tell you the least toxic way, or if, hey, you're not going to be able to save it, start over, or, just do this, as simple. So contact us first. We want you guys to be safe, and we want all the pollinators and everything else out there to be safe.
Yeah, this question came up in the stone fruit breakout room actually as well, regarding peaches and peaches having like a little bit of ooze coming out of them. So what we found out from Trevor, and if you'd like to chime in, is that is related to an insect laying larvae inside. And so it's the puncture wound when they lay their eggs that is making the sap come out. I think we talked about spraying neem possibly after the flowers fall off early in the spring.
If I may say, I think you should be more concerned about having insecticide on your fruit more than insects in your fruit. That is way more dangerous.
And insects are a source of protein too.
Good point.
Sorry, folks.
Yeah, we actually just finished a grant where we had FIU identifying thousands of insects in our food forest and documenting everything. And not surprisingly for us, but for a lot of people, it was really surprising how there was way more beneficial insects than any kind of invasive insects found in the gardens in the food forest. So yeah, the beneficial ones far outweigh. And a lot of times if you just let nature take its course, the beneficial insects take care of the bad stuff.
Yes, Alina, you can. I've tried to get the little worms out of the guava before by doing that. So has anyone ever seen mango flowers when they're being pollinated? There are just like every pollinator you can think of makes a haze around the flowers of mango, because I have to think that mango flowers, their nectar is as sweet as the fruit of a mango. And too bad they don't come to fruit in the school year, because they're the king or the queen of tropical fruits down here. But all of those pollinators, and again, if you look at lychees time after time after time, it's just every pollinator out there, not just honeybees. So tiny little butterflies, wasps.
Yeah, mangoes are amazing. So with that, I would love to open us up to have kind of replicating as if we were in a big room and there were several different tables, that we could rotate around or just have a different table that's dedicated to a topic. But in light of us being on a virtual session, we're going to be using the breakout rooms. So this can be an opportunity to focus a little bit more specifically about any of the topics that we shared about today. You can ask questions, you can share about what you've done. And we really, again, just wanted to create opportunities to connect with one another. And so the kind of conversation tables that we're opening up with these breakout rooms are fruit, trees, and bushes. If you want to go into a deeper dive or continue our conversation from our earlier breakout room, also perennial gardening, which will include food forest, and we'll have our wonderful Spanish interpreter in that room, providing Spanish language services, and pollinator gardens, and then teaching connections as well. So we invite you all to join those breakout rooms. If you have any trouble getting into them, then we can assign you manually. Just let us know which room you want to go into. And you're also able to hop around and change which room you'd like to go into. So we'll end the session at 5 p.m. just from those rooms. Your room moderator will close us out from there, so you don't need to come back here to say goodbye. But we do really appreciate you being here today, and we hope this time has been valuable for you. So, and if you don't want to go in any of those rooms, I'll be here. I'm happy to talk with you about anything you'd like to share. So,